Quarter 2, quiz number 2 review, sections 8-9, 9-1, and 9-2. Our first section goes over 8.9, and it's just radical equations. So we're solving these equations that involve radicals. Our first one we have is 4 plus the square root of m is equal to 9. So our first idea, or our first thing that we have to do is to get that square root by itself. So we would subtract the 4 from each side. So it's going to give us the square root of m is equal to 5. From here, we're going to square both sides to get rid of that radical, and we're going to have m is equal to 25. For 2, we have the square root of 5x minus 2 plus 3 is equal to 6. So we're going to start by subtracting the 3 from each side to isolate the radical of 5x minus 2 is equal to 3. From here, we're going to square both sides to get rid of that radical. So we have 5x minus 2 is equal to 9. We then get x by itself, so we're going to add the 2 to both sides. We have 5x is equal to 11, and then we divide each side by the 5 to get x is equal to 11 over 5. For 3, we have the square root of 5x plus 1 minus 6 is equal to 8. So we first are going to move the 6 over by adding it to both sides. So we have the square root of 5x plus 1 is equal to 14. From here, we're going to square both sides. So this is going to leave us with 5x plus 1 is equal to 196. From here, we are going to take that 1 and move it over by subtracting it from each side. So we get 5x is equal to 195. And then we divide by 5 on each side to get x is equal to 39. For 4, we have the square root of 3x square root of 3x plus 2 is equal to 4. So we're first going to square both sides to get rid of that radical. So we have 3x plus 2 is equal to 16. From there, we're going to subtract 2 from each side. So we have 3x is equal to 14. And then we divide by 3 and get that x is equal to 14 over 3. For 15, we have 36x squared is equal to 49. So we want to get the x, not the x squared. So for this one, what we're going to do is divide each side by the 36 to get the x squared by itself. So we have x squared is equal to 49 over 36. Then we take the square root of both sides to get x is equal to. When you take the square root of both sides, we are going to put the plus or minus in front of our answer, and then we have 7 over 6, so x is equal to plus or minus 7 over 6. For 6, we have 3 times a minus 5 squared is equal to 21. So we are first going to divide each side by this 3 to get a minus 5 squared is equal to 9. From here, we're going to take the square root of both sides, so it cancels out that exponent to give us a minus 5 on the left side, and the square root of that 7 is going to be plus or minus the square root of 7. From here, we're just getting a by itself, so we're adding 5 to both sides, and we get that a is equal to 5 plus or minus the square root of 7. For 7, we have 6x squared is equal to 54. So we're going to start by dividing each side by the 6. We get x squared is equal to 9. Then we take the square root of both sides, so x is equal to positive and negative 3. For number 8, we have x minus 3 squared is equal to 7. So right now our binomial squared is isolated, so we're going to take the square root of both sides. So it just gives us x minus 3 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 7. Then from here, we're going to move the 3 over by adding it to both sides. So x is equal to 3 plus or minus the square root of 7. For 9, we have 2x squared minus 128 is equal to 0. So then we're going to move the 128 over to add it to both sides. We have 2x squared is equal to 128. We divide each side by the 2 and get that x squared is equal to 64. From here, we take the square root of both sides, so x is equal to plus or minus 8. For 10, we have a minus 25 squared is equal to 9. So we're going to start by taking the square root of both sides. We're going to have a minus 25 is equal to plus or minus 3. So that's going to be a minus 25 is equal to negative 3, as well as a minus 25 is equal to positive 3. We're going to move the 25 over by adding it to both sides. So this is going to give us a is equal to 22, and a is equal to 28. And then on your test, or sorry, on your quiz, you're going to see it as brackets. So 22 comma 28 would be the answer choice that you choose. For 11, we're given c squared plus 2c minus 15 is equal to 0, and we're told to solve this by completing the square. So first thing we want to do is to isolate the constant. Our constant is at 15, so we're going to add it to both sides. So this is going to be c squared plus 2c is equal to 15. If our a, so the number in front of the x squared, the c squared in this case, is something other than 1, we would divide everything by that number right now. In this case, it is 1, so we want to identify our b, which is 2. We're going to do b over 2 squared. So that gives us 2 over 2 squared, which is 1 squared, and that's 1. So this 1's going to be added to both sides of our equation to give us c squared plus 2c plus 1 is equal to 15 plus 1. We're going to factor the left side and add the right side. This is going to give us c plus 1 squared is equal to 16. We take the square root of both sides. So we're going to get c plus 1 is equal to plus or minus 4. We separate this into two equations to have c plus 1 is equal to negative 4, as well as c plus 1 is equal to positive 4. We're subtracting the 1 from each side, so c is equal to negative 5, and c is equal to 3. So again, if you were doing this on a quiz, you would see the answer choice of negative 5 comma 3 and pick that one. For 12, we're given b squared minus 4b minus 10 is equal to 0. So again, we're going to add that 10 to both sides. B squared minus 4b is equal to 10. From here, we don't have to divide anything because b squared has a coefficient of 1. So we are going to identify that b, which is negative 4, and do b over 2 squared. So that's negative 4 over 2 squared, which is negative 2 squared, and that is 4. From here, we're going to add the 4 to both sides of our equation to get b squared minus 4b plus 4 is equal to 10 plus 4. From here, we're factoring the left, adding the right, so b minus 2 squared is equal to 14. We take the square root of both sides, so b minus 2 is equal to plus or minus the square root of 14. We're going to add that 2 to both sides, and we get that b is equal to 2 plus or minus the square root of 14. For 13, we have a squared minus 12a plus 35 is equal to 0. So for this one, we're going to subtract the 35 from each side, like we've done with the last ones. we have a squared minus 12a is equal to negative 35. From here, we take that b, which is negative 12, and use b over 2 squared. So that's going to be negative 12 over 2 squared. This gives us negative 6 squared, which is 36. We're going to add this 36 to both sides of our equation to get a squared minus 12a plus 36 is equal to negative 35 plus 36. So this is simplifying to be a minus 6 squared is equal to 1. We take the square root of both sides. We get a minus 6 is equal to positive and negative 1. We separate this into two equations, so a minus 6 is equal to negative 1, and a minus 6 is equal to positive 1. We're going to add the 6 to both sides, and we get that a is equal to 5, and a is equal to 7. For 14, which is on the next page, we have x squared minus 6x minus 16 is equal to 0. So we're going to add the 16 to both sides. We get x squared minus 6x is equal to 16. Our b is negative 6, so we're going to do negative 6 over 2 squared, which is negative 3 squared, and that's 9. We're going to add the 9 to both sides, so we get x squared minus 6x plus 9 is equal to 16 plus 9. So this is x minus 3 squared is equal to 25. We take the square root of both sides, so we get x minus 3 is equal to plus or minus 5. We're separating this into two equations, so x minus 3 is equal to negative 5, and x minus 3 is equal to positive 5. We add the 3 to both sides. And we get that x is equal to negative 2, and x is equal to 8. For 15, we have x squared minus 4x minus 77 is equal to 0. So we were going to add the 77 to both sides. So we have x squared minus 4x is equal to 77. That b is negative 4. So b over 2 squared is negative 4 over 2 squared. That gives us negative 2 squared, which is 4. We add this 4 to both sides of our equation. So we get x squared minus 4x plus 4 is equal to 77 plus 4. From here, we are going to factor the left side and add the right side. So this is going to be x minus 2 squared is equal to 81. We're going to take the square root of both sides to get x minus 2 is equal to plus or minus 9. We're going to separate into two equations, so x minus 2 is equal to negative 9, and x minus 2 is equal to positive 9. So this is going to give us two answers that are x is equal to negative 7 and 11. For 16, we have c squared minus 10c minus 20 is equal to 0. So we're going to move the 20 over. We're going to add it to both sides. We have c squared minus 10c is equal to 20. We are going to take b, which is negative 10, divide it by 2, and square it. So that gives us negative 5 squared, which is 25. We add this to both sides of our equation to get c squared minus 10c plus 25 is equal to 20 plus 25. We're going to factor the left side and get c minus 5 squared is equal to, add the right side, that's 45. We're taking the square root of both sides. That 45 is 3 and 15. The 15 is 3 and 5. So we're going to pair up those 3's, and we get c minus 5 is equal to 3 square root 5. Make sure the plus or minus goes in front of it. We're going to add this 5 to both sides, and we get that c is equal to 5 plus or minus 3 square root 5.